Alright, here we go. Special shout out to Lindsay on this video because it was her idea for me to make a review video for your test. And I think that you guys will appreciate this. So, just letting you know, on your test you are going to have 20 questions. 5 of them are going to be multiple choice. 4 factoring, 1 quadratic formula, 1 discriminant, 1 solve by completing the square, 2 solving any way you'd like. I will recommend square roots, 2 simplifying with eyes, 1 graph, but you're going to have to list all info and write the equation in vertex form, 2 write the equations, 1 will be in vertex form, 1 in intercept form, and 1 application problem. Now this review that you guys are doing in class, I will do every single question step by step, so heads up, this video will be quite lengthy for me to go into detail for every single one of these questions, but I think by the time you're done watching it, you will find out that it is really worth it, because if you can handle every question on this, you will ace the test. Just watch. Okay, so the first one is a graphing problem, and I am going to suggest you go get your calculator really quick. I'll get my calculator and we'll go through it step by step. Alright, so I'm going to actually show you how to do this with the calculator for the graphing part. However, you are going to have to know how to write it in vertex form. Remember, to do that, that's completing the square. So that's where we take our y equals, and we have our x squared plus 6x, but we still bring the 8 over to the other side, so we subtract 8. And then we still have to complete the square. So half of 6 is 3. Squared is we have to add 9 to both sides. Okay? Now from there, we have y equals. We write this side as the square of a binomial. So remember, that's where we take x, whatever this symbol is, and half of this number. So half of 6 is 3. We put the squared on the outside, and that's equal to negative 8 plus 9, which is 1. So then our vertex form, this is where you guys had trouble on the quiz. You do not square root both sides. You don't do anything from here. You just bring the 1 back over to the left, and your final answer is y is equal to x plus 3 squared minus 1. That's your vertex form. Now from here, our vertex is opposite of the inside, which is a negative 3, comma, outside, which is negative 1. And our axis of symmetry has to be x equals the x-coordinate of your vertex, so negative 3. Now the y-intercept is always going to be 0, comma, something. And the x-intercepts are always going to be something, comma, 0. Now this one's going to have 2. And I'm going to show you how to use your calculator to get both of those. So now, in your graphing calculator, you're supposed to type this into y1, your equation. I actually like going with the regular equation because I'm going to show you a little trick. And then in y2, don't forget you need to type 0. So, let's double check to make sure that we completed the square correctly by checking for our vertex. So press graph or zoom 6. Remember, zoom 6 takes you back to a standard window. Remember, your vertex is either at the top or bottom of the graph. Since this is at the bottom of the graph, this is called a minimum. So if you press second trace and then you go to number 3, which is minimum, remember it's going to ask you for the left bound, which means you take your little blinky guy and you take him all the way to the left side of your vertex. And we're going to click enter. And then when it says right bound, you take your little blinky guy and you take it to the right side of the vertex. You click enter. And then when it says guess, you go down to where you think the vertex is. You press enter one last time. And of course, we can round that to a negative 3, comma, negative 1. Now, why did I do that when I already have it? To double check to make sure that I have the same vertex. Now, if you have a different vertex than what the calculator gave you, that's telling you that your vertex form is incorrect as well, or you just forgot to take the inside and make it negative. So make sure you double check with your calculator. So now we know for certainty that our vertex is negative 3, negative 1. So we're going to put our vertex there. And don't forget, while you're at it, we might as well just graph our axis of symmetry now. Okay, so to get our y-intercept, we just have to look at the table for that. So we press second graph, and we go to where y, or where x is 0, and we look at what y is. It's 0, 8. So we know that the y-intercept is when x is 0. So you look at the table, it's 0, 8. So there's our 8. So we know we're going to have a 0, 8. And now we just have to find the x-intercepts. Now remember, you must have y2 equals 0 for this. And now this is just finding two intersections. So if you look at the graph, we have two places where the graph crosses the x-axis. What you do is you press second, trace, number 5 is intersect. So we're going to scroll to the left and put it right about here. We're going to press enter 3 times, and we're going to find out that the x-intercept on the left is -4, 0. So this is -4, 0. And then we're going to do it again. We're going to press second, trace, number 5, and we're going to scroll to the right, and we're going to press enter 3 more times, and we're going to get -2, 0. So our other x-intercept is -2, 0. Make sure you plot those right here on the graph. You can also go to second table and get a couple more points if you'd like. So we can go to -1, 3. We can go to -5 and get -5, 3. We can go to -6 and be up at 8. And then we just draw our parabola. So this question is probably going to be worth about 6 points. I know it took 7 minutes to explain it, but the rest of this will go by pretty quickly. Okay? So that's how you graph, complete the square to write in vertex form, and all the good stuff you need to know for this problem. Now the other thing is this opens up. The reason it opens up is because this is positive, and it's normal because the number in front is 1. Now remember, if it's negative, it opens down. If it's positive, it opens up. If you have 1, the shape is normal. If it's a number bigger than 1, so 2 or even 3 halves, which is 1.5, that's narrow. And any fraction less than 1, like 1/2, is wide. If you understand this whole section, not only will you get the graphing question correct, but also 2 or 3 multiple choice questions. Okay, that's why I spent so much time on this. All right, so next thing we're going to do is factor. All right, so factoring. I told you there's going to be 4 factoring problems on your test. Ironically, there's 4 factoring questions right here. So let's see. For number 2, the first thing you are always supposed to do in every single factoring question is always look for a greatest common factor. We can factor both of these terms by 2. So I'm going to factor out a 2, and then the inside is x squared minus 16. Now from here, you're not done, because if you look at the inside, we have a perfect square, we have another perfect square, we have a minus sign in between, so we are going to factor this using the difference of 2 squares. So don't forget about your GCF of 2. He doesn't go anywhere. But now we're going to factor. So the square root of x is x. We need 1 plus sign. We need 1 minus sign. The square root of 16 is 4. And now you are done. For number 3, again, first thing you always check for is a GCF. We could actually factor out not only a 7, but a 7x out of here. And inside we're going to be left with an x plus 6. And you are already done. This is an example of just a GCF can be factored out. So you're finished. Don't worry about anything else. Number 4. This is a factoring question where there's no number in front of x squared. We have three terms, so this is what you might call unfoiling or the special number game, and that special number game is what two numbers will multiply to a negative 30 but add to a negative 7. So you just need to think about your factors of 30, and since this is negative, the bigger one is going to be negative. So what two numbers can you think of that will multiply to 30 but differ by 7, since we're looking for a negative? The answer to that is a negative 10 and a positive 3. So you are done with this question. If you want, and you finish early, you can take the time to actually FOIL this back out and see if you get the correct answer. Or if you're slick, you can use your graphing calculator just to double check. Now finally, number 5. Number 5 is the one where I say you can use guess and check or Batman or splitting the middle term, whatever it is that you want to do. In one of the days in class, I gave you a list of what the steps were. Here we go again. Step 1, multiply your first term and last term. So we have 2x squared times 5 is 10x squared. And then what you do is you have to find two numbers that multiply to 10 but add to a negative 7. And that's going to be a negative 5 and a negative 2. Negative 5 times a negative 2 is a positive 10. Negative 5 minus 2 is a negative 7. We put some x's on here. And then remember, you bring your first term back down, so this is 2x squared. And you bring your last term down, and you have a positive 5. From here, you group the first two and the last two, and you factor out your GCF. So the GCF of this is just x, but that's going to leave you with 2x minus 5 on the inside. For this one, our GCF is a negative 1, which is going to leave us with 2x minus 5 on the inside. Now you'll know you did this correct if the insides are the same. Since the inside of the parentheses is 2x minus 5 for both of these, we're going to write 2x minus 5. And then we're going to take our leading coefficients, and we're going to put those together so we have an x and a negative 1. So we have x minus 1, and now you have factored. Now again, if you prefer guess and checking, that's totally fine. As long as you come up with the correct answer, I'm happy. Okay? So that's how you factor. So other things you're going to have to be able to do is use the quadratic formula. Yes, that is your job to memorize. I will not be giving any formulas tomorrow when you take your test. So here we go. Quadratic formula is opposite of b. So this is a negative 3 plus or minus a big old square root, and the inside goes b squared. I like parentheses. So we have 3 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is 8. If it helps you, put an a, b, and c over these numbers. And make sure it's equal to 0 before you do quadratic formula or discriminant. You should never have it equal to a number. Okay, and this is all over 2 times a, which is still 2. So now you just have a little bit of simplifying to do. So the negative 3 is fine for now. Plus or minus the square root. 3 squared is 9. And then we have a negative 4 times 2 times 8. So that's going to be a negative 64 all over 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay? So 9 minus 64 is a negative 55. So this is going to give us a negative 3 plus or minus the square root of a negative 55 all over 4. So from here, all you have to do is simplify the square root if possible. Now 55 cannot be square rooted or simplified. However, you're not allowed to leave the negative inside the radical. So your final answer for this problem is x equals a negative 3 plus or minus I root 55 all over 4. Now you can split it up if necessary. You can write it as negative 3/4 plus or minus I root 55 over 4. But since nothing can be simplified, you are allowed to leave it this way. Now, if it can be simplified, make sure you split it up and simplify it. Okay? Next, the discriminant and the type of solutions. First thing again, just like quadratic formula, you must write this equal to 0 before you can start. So you have to subtract that 6 back over to the left. We still have our a, b, and c, but the discriminant is just b squared minus 4ac. So that means we're going to have 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times the negative 6. And that's going to give us 25. And this is going to be plus 24. So we have 49 is our discriminant. Now that's the discriminant. The type of solutions. If you have a positive number or a positive discriminant, then you have 2 real solutions. If the discriminant is 0, you have 1 real solution. And if the discriminant is a negative number, you have 2 imaginary solutions. So, since we have a d that is positive, we have a discriminant of 49, which means we have 2 real solutions. Okay? So that will cover the quadratic formula / discriminant section. Okay? Next 2 examples will be writing in vertex form and solving by completing the square. Again, the skill is the same. It's about completing the square. Okay, so to solve by completing the square, same thing as on the quiz. First thing you need to do is you need to move the number to the right. Okay, and every other thing, when you factor, quadratic formula, you want everything to the left equal to 0. However, when you're solving by completing the square, we only want x values to the left, that's squareds or by just a single x, and we bring our number to the right. Now, of course, I left space already because you know what we're about to do over there. Half of 5 is 5 halves squared is 25/4. Now, I'm giving you a fraction in this video for a reason. Use your calculator. If you take your calculator and press 5 divided by 2 and then square it, change it back to a fraction, it'll do it for you. Okay, so you have to add 25/4 to both sides. I'll get the calculator back up in a minute and show you. Okay, but now from here, everything else is the same. We're going to write this side as the square of a binomial. So we have x, this symbol, half of this number, squared is equal to 25/4 minus 2, or negative 2 plus 25/4. So I can do these in my head, but you guys don't like them, so I'm going to go get the calculator now. Let me pause for a second and I'll be right back. So here we go. Let me show you that whole skill really quick. So back over here when I said half of 5 was 5 halves squared is 25/4. Watch, your calculator will do that. So if you press 5 divided by 2 and click enter, it gives you a decimal. Now if you square that by pressing squared, it'll automatically square the previous answer, and you click enter, it gives you 6.25, and then if you click math, enter, enter, and change it to a fraction, it will give you the 25/4. So now remember, in here, this is a plus 25/4. So this is 25/4 and a negative 2. From here, you can just press minus 2, enter, and then change it back to a fraction. So math, enter, enter. We get that the right side is 17/4. Okay, but now we're solving. This is not writing in vertex form this time. So what we need to do here is we need to square root both sides to get rid of the squared symbol. That's going to give us x plus 5 halves is equal to plus or minus the square root of 17 cannot be simplified, but the square root of 4 is just 2. And then we just subtract the 5 halves. So we have x is equal to a negative 5 halves plus or minus the square root of 17 all over 2, and you are done with this solving by completing the square. All right? So again, that's a little trick on how you use your calculator as well to help you. Now, writing in vertex form, it is the same process. Just like earlier, we have y is equal to, we have x squared plus 10x, bring the 3 to the right side, so subtract 3 from both sides. And then half of 10 is 5, squared is 25, so we add 25 to both sides. And now we have y is equal to, this is x, same symbol, half of that number, squared, is equal to a negative 3 plus 25, which is 22. So then, do not square root both sides. This is not solving. You just bring the 22 back to the left side. So y is equal to x plus 5 squared minus 22. And your vertex is a negative 5, negative 22, if you are asked to write the vertex as well. Okay? So number 10 and 11, these are solving by any way. Now when it says solve by any way, try square roots first. Okay, so it's x squared equals a negative 25. The only thing you have to do for this problem is square root both sides, and you get x is equal to, do not forget your plus or minus, so this is plus or minus. The square root of 25 is 5. Don't be tricked into saying root 5. So 5i. I's are never inside radicals. So again, you just treat the number by like you always would. What's the square root of 25? It's 5. But since it's negative, we put an I, and we are done. For number 11, similar. First thing you have to do is subtract 2 to the other side. So we have x minus 4 squared is equal to negative 10 minus 2 is a negative 12. From here, you square root both sides again. Now the square root is going to cancel out this squared symbol right here, so we have an x minus 4. That's equal to, again, we're square rooting a negative. The square root of 12 simplifies to 2 root 3. So since it's negative, we have plus or minus 2i root 3. Remember, the I does not stay inside the radical, neither does the negative sign. It must come out in front. So now we just have to add 4 to both sides, and our final answer is x is equal to 4 plus or minus 2i root 3, and we are done with number 11. Okay? Here's number 12 and 13, simplifying with i's. Number 12. This is where you need to multiply the top and bottom by what we know is the conjugate. So the conjugate is the bottom, but we switch the sign. So this is 2 plus I. 2 plus I. Now on the top, you must FOIL. So negative 2 times 2 is a negative 4. Negative 2 times a positive I is a negative 2i. 3i times 2 is 6i. And 3i times I is 3i squared. Now the bottom, there's a shortcut that only works for conjugates. 2 times 2 is 4. It's always going to be plus, and then you multiply the numbers in front of I. So this is a 1i, this is a 1i. 1 times 1 is 1. It'll always be plus. So now you just have to simplify the top. So remember, I squared is a negative 1. So this is like saying a negative 4 and a negative 3. So we have a negative 7. We combine our like terms in the middle. So we have negative 2i and 6i, which is plus 4i, all over 4 plus 1, which is 5, and you are done. Remember, it's a good skill to separate it, negative 7/5 plus 4i over 5, just in case that can be simplified. They can't, but if you write it that way, you're safer. Then number 13. It does not matter if you want to distribute the 3 first or distribute the 3 last. Really, it's up to you. So I'll distribute it first. You only distribute it to the first one. So we have 6 plus 3i, and now we have 3 minus 2i. Now you just FOIL. So 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times a negative 2i is a negative 12i. 3i times 3 is 9i. And 3i times a negative 2i is a negative 6i squared. Again, do not forget that I squared is actually a negative 1. So a negative 6 times a negative 1 is going to change that to a plus 6. So 18 plus 6 is a 24. A negative 12i and a 9i is going to combine to a negative 3i, and you are done. One little thing that happened on the quiz with these two problems was the fact that you guys forgot that the I comes second. The way we write our complex numbers are always real number first, and then it's going to be plus or minus whatever the problem is, your imaginary number. Okay, so remember, real number first, imaginary number second. All right? We are getting pretty close to the end here. So I would say we'll probably be done in about another 10 minutes. We only have 3 questions left. But of course, I want to go through each one of these in great detail. If you feel you know how to do these problems, you can feel free to skip ahead a little bit and just check your answer from what you did in class today. So your vertex and the point are given. You must know your formulas for tomorrow. Again, I am not giving you any formulas. So this is y is equal to a times x minus h squared plus k. So we're going to have to substitute in our h, our k, our x, and y. Remember, the point's always the x and y. The vertex is your h and k. If you flip those, you're in trouble. So we have y of negative 4 is equal to a times our x is 3 minus a negative 2, so that's going to turn into plus, squared, and then plus our k of 3. So negative 4 is equal to a. 3 plus 2 is 5, squared, plus 3. 5 squared is 25, so this is technically 25a plus 3 is equal to a negative 4. Subtract 3 from both sides. That's going to give you a negative 7 is equal to 25a. So a is equal to a negative 7 over 25. You are not done. That's just a. You must write the final answer of y is equal to negative 7 over 25 times x plus 2 squared plus 3. This is your vertex form final answer. Okay? So now number 15. Number 15, again, you need to know that y is equal to a times x minus p times x minus q, where p and q are your x-intercepts. So again, we have our p, our q, our x, our y, and we plug everything in to the equation. So we have 5 is equal to a times a negative 2 minus 4 times a negative 2 plus 2, because we have a q of 2. So this is going to give us 5 is equal to a times a negative 6 times a 0. And that means that this goes away. So we actually have, in this case, a problem that does not work. This is a special one where this isn't really going to work. So what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to change a number really quick, just so you can see what happens. Now, if this happens, you cannot divide by a 0, so this technically means that this isn't even a quadratic. So let's change that number really quick. So we can get a real answer here. I'm changing this -2 to a -3. Okay, so then in here, this would become a +3. So that would give us a 1 over here. So now we're just going to finish this question as if it were to work out. So we have 5 is equal to a -6 times 1 is a -6. Divide both sides by a -6 and we get our a value is -5/6. So again, this is going to be y is equal to a -5/6 times x minus 4 times x plus 3. Okay, again, I'm changing that -2 to a -3 so you can see that it actually does work out. The first one wasn't going to work. So this is it. This is your final answer in intercept form. So make sure you take a couple of minutes to study these two formulas. You will need to know them for tomorrow. Okay? Last question. Do you guys find it ironic that I gave you 16 questions out of 20 when a couple of the multiple choice is about graphing anyway? Like I said, if you can handle this, you will ace the test. So, an arch has the equation of -1/4 x times x minus 50. All we need to do is type this in our graphing calculator to find out how wide and how tall the arch is. So I'm going to pause you for just a second to get my graphing calculator and we will finish this review. Alright, so here we go. I typed the equation into y1. In y2, you can have the 0 if you want to, but I'm going to show you how to kind of cheat through this one, but it's good to have it there just in case. So you press graph, and right away I'm going to let you know you're not going to see much, and that's because your window is not set up properly. If you think about this in intercept form, this has an intercept of 0, but this has an intercept of 50. So we're going to have to change our window here. So I'm going to change my x max to like 55. And we don't need to be negative for this since you saw where the graph was. So I'm going to change my x minimum to a -1. And I'm going to change my x maximum to, like I said, 55. I like going a little bit beyond. And our y minimum, we don't need to know anything about below ground, so I'm changing that to a -1. And I don't know how tall this is going to be, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by 100. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit too big. So we do this, and actually look, it goes way over that still. So maybe you want to change your y maximum. Let's try 200. And then we're going to press graph. And now we can see the top of the arch. We can see the whole thing. Okay? Now there's another thing that you can do. You can press zoom. And then you can go all the way down or shortcut click up. You can try zoom fitting. Okay? So then it's actually just going to do the whole thing for you. Now that's just a little shortcut. Sometimes zoom fit doesn't always look as nice. So, from here, how wide is the arch? That's where we have our two x-intercepts, our start and our finish. Now again, I kind of told you a little shortcut here by doing it by hand. If we have this as x is equal to 0 and this x is equal to 50, you know if you're starting at 0 and landing at 50 that the width is 50. And we'll call it feet for this example. Okay? Now, if you want to do it with your graphing calculator, it's the exact same thing as the very first problem we did. You have y2 is 0, and you just find the intersections by clicking second, trace, number 5, find the left intersection, find the right intersection, and it'll give you 0, it'll give you 50, and you know the width is 50. Now, if your left intersects, say like, what if it was from -10 to 40? That's still 50. You just have to do the distance from the left all the way to the right, okay? And that would be your right one minus the left one. So in this case, 50 minus 0. So our graph looks a little bit like this. We have to find our maximum. So let me go get the calculator again and we'll finish. Okay, so the height is at the top. So we're going to press second calc. Our maximum is number 4. And what we need to do is we need to take our left bound, right bound. So what you need to do is you need to take your little blinky thing, and I'm going to put him right about there. Click enter. And then I'm going to take him to the right side of the arc. And I'm going to click enter again. And then we're going to go to the top where we think it is. We're going to guess. And we're going to find out that the maximum is 25, comma, 156.25. So the x is just the distance. The height is what we want, our y value. So how tall is it? 156.25 feet. And we just found that by finding the maximum with our graphing calculator. Okay, so that's it. That's the work that you guys did in class today. I wanted to make a really nice review for you. Again, thank you, Lindsay, for coming up with this creative idea. 36-minute video. It's the longest one I've ever made. However, I figure you guys deserved it. If you enjoyed this video, please send me an email. Let me know how you feel about your test. Do you think this is going to help you out for your test tomorrow? Please let me know. This is Longo, and I am out. See you. Bye.